like to kick off with our very special guest. Philip, you're going first. Tell us about you.
Thank you, everybody. My name is Philip VanDusen, and I am a branding consultant. I've had a 30-year plus career on both the branding agency as well as the corporate client side. I've been a VP of design at PepsiCo and ECD at Landor Associates on the agency side. I've been running my own consultancy for about 8 years now, and building a personal brand, a giant kind of library of content, and joining the consulting economy, basically. And so I've been I'm been invited by Aquent. Thank you very much for having me here, you guys. I've been using Aquent for probably 20 years when I was on corporate and agency side. So I highly recommend their services, and that not being paid for that plug. But in terms of creatives in particular, I've probably interviewed 4,000 creatives in my life and hired 400. So I've been on both sides of that street. And I'm excited to talk about personal branding today.
Yeah, it sounds like you know a little bit about personal branding, Philip, and that's really reassuring to me. It is. I'm just kidding. Thank you for being here. All right, Simon, your turn.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. How do I compete with that, Philip? I don't know if I've got that much credibility when it comes to personal brand, but my name's Simon Lusty. I lead all things marketing here at Aquent. I also have responsibility for our international business. So all of the business outside of North America, across sort of UK, Europe, and Asia Pacific as well. I've worked with Aquent now for a number of years. I always sort of joke that I've overstayed my welcome. But, you know, personal brand to me has been a fascinating topic, you know, for many, many years. And, you know, it's a lifelong pursuit. So I'm excited to be joining Philip today and Susie to sort of be talking about all things personal brand.
I love it. I'm excited for you to be here too. And you're underselling yourself, Simon, though I'm used to that because I've worked with Simon for 22 years. So you don't have to give your number. I'll give it to you. And I am Susie Hall, President of Community and Customer Engagement here at Aquent. I have been here for 25 years. So wait, what? And I lead a community for senior design and creative leaders called Inside Out here for Aquent here. So I get to work with Simon a lot. But super excited to talk about personal branding. And I know we got a lot of different angles that we're gonna tackle. But to get us started and make sure that we are actually we're heading down the right street here, we're going to throw a question here. This is your next chance to interact beyond where you are. Ready? So if we can put up on the screen, here's your question. What is the first word that comes to mind when you hear personal brand? So when you hear that, what is the first word that comes to mind for you? If you wouldn't mind, throw that into the chat here. We want to get some answers from you. From those of you who are here joining us. Personal brand, what do you think about? Boop, 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 nothing. Okay, Philip, I think we're in the wrong room. I'm just kidding. New Jersey.
This is
they think about New Jersey.
Then I'm in the right state.
Then you're in the right state. I love it. Equity. Thank you, Robin. I love it. Credibility. I love it. Keywords. Oh, that's a good one. Blake, marketing. All right. Value, expression. These are all such positive, wonderful words. Identity, me, value, first impressions, authentic. Wow, my USP. Uh-oh, Philip. Someone may have taken one of your courses. I'm just going to put that out there. Memory, identity. I love it. These are great, great words. Thank you for joining along here. I know the words personal brand bring up a lot of different feelings for a lot of different people. But we would be remiss not asking the very folks here on this call. So, Simon, when you hear personal brand, what do you think?
I think what everyone's saying there is great, and I think that definitely rings true for me. But for me, I think if I had to choose one word, it would be investment.
Investment.
And I'm going to throw a second word in there, if that's okay, Susie.
Peter.
Intention. I think investment and intention. I think no brand, personal or organizational brand, grows in value without both of these.
I love it. Thank you. And I do see, Milka, I see your question, and I'll be happy to connect with you about Inside Out. Thank you for putting that in there too, or encourage your engagement. Thank you for that. Now, Philip, you know a little bit about personal brand. Just let's focus on just when those two words come up, what's the one word that first comes to you?
Well, I usually say authority, but I've been thinking about it, and I really think a better word is agency. I think having agency over your own career and having ownership over your own career is really what personal branding is all about at its root.
What a great way to look at that. And I like how Simon worked in 2 words and other words, and Philip had to work in 3. So I love it. So let's talk definitely about personal brand. So for those of you here on the call today, just to set the stage, I know you read the event information, but today we're going to talk to you not just about personal brand, but about why right now it is not only important, it's always been important to have a personal brand, but it is urgent for you to have a personal brand because the world is changing around us. Lots of opportunities are popping up. The way that people engage with work and think about work is changing. So we're going to prove to you today how important it is for you to take that next step and make sure that you have a great personal brand. So to get us started and make sure that we're providing insights that will be most relevant to you, we have another question. And I promise we're not going to have a question every 3 minutes. But here's our next question, which is, how many years of work experience do you have? So for those of you on this call, to help us calibrate and get the right information to you, don't overthink it. It could be just throw a round number in there. Or you can say too many to count. I did say 25, so I guess it's too late for me, but you can say anything. So about how many years approximately of work experience do you have? If you'll throw that into the chat, that'll help us make sure as we're sharing insights and thoughts that we're relevant to you. So I love it. Okay, great. 30, 25, 15. Lusty, there we go. 32, 25. I love it. Robin, you're very specific. Thank you. Oh, 30 plus, 17, 30. Okay, so we've got a lot of people on this call that have got a lot of your Gentry, I hope that's a typo, but I very much appreciate that. All right, so we got a lot of people with a lot of experience. That seems to be lion's share. A few people with, I see a 1, a 7. Awesome. Yes, great. All right. Thank you so much. Position of personal brand. Ooh, that's a good question. So Chris, thank you for the question. We're not going to lose that question, even though we have a lot of numbers coming in, but we are going to jump in and start with some thoughts about why it is so urgent right now to work on personal brand. So as we're preparing to share insights with you here today, Philip, you had something really interesting. Well, just more than one really interesting thing, but you kicked us off with something really interesting about what's happening in the job market right now. So can you tell us a little bit more your thoughts around the rise of the consulting class? How you frame that?
I think that there is a rise of the consulting class happening now. I think 5, 8 years ago, we heard that there was this increase in number of people who were becoming independent in the workplace. But I think that a number of things have happened both in the economy and in our culture, which have added gasoline to that fire. McKinsey has come out and said that 43% of people will be involved in independent freelancing by 2024, which is right now. And so there are a number of different factors that have kind of added to that. One is business needs. I think that there are businesses themselves are under a lot of financial pressure in the economy, and they have been kind of divesting themselves of full-time employees in the favor of independent consultants because A, it's cheaper, and B, they can build teams as they need them and hire exact niche skills that they need for that particular skill. And so they are increasingly looking outside for the capability sets that they need, but on a temporary basis. Another piece of it, and we all know this, was COVID. COVID kind of threw us all into the consulting class overnight. And before you knew it, we were all working on Zoom 24 hours a day. And so we went from, a smattering of 15% of remote workers in corporate and agency life to everybody. And now they're trying to claw that back, but they're actually having a very difficult time doing that because people have realized that their work life has gotten a lot more pleasurable, and they're hesitant to give up those bennies that they've gotten from being able to work at home and have that flex life. There's also added to that the younger generations of millennials and Gen Z are highly preferring that sort of flexible work life. And so they are in many cases choosing to go the consulting route right out of the gate, or the independent freelance route right out of the gate. Another thing that's made that very easy, and we're going to talk about AI a little bit later as we get into the nuts and bolts of building a personal brand, but the technology has changed dramatically as well. And there have been an explosion of platforms, again, fueled by COVID, I think, but this technology was already building at that point, of the digital platforms that are making it very easy to communicate, share files, basically work in a live sort of way outside of the office. And then I think that the other key piece of it is just there's been a reaction against the hustle culture. I think that, the go, work. One of those things that COVID did for us, I think, is it brought everyone to a screeching halt out of the kind of racing, rat wheel that we were all on, and it stopped it so completely. Everyone as a collective culture, I think, were suddenly reevaluating their work and their lives, how it related to their lives, and feeling it in a very different way rather than intellectualizing it. And I think that also has really kind of shifted how people think about work, and because of all those other things I mentioned, it's making it much easier for them to make that transition to being independent.
I love it. And that definitely ties into that word that you used, your new word of agency, like being able to create opportunities and make choices for yourself. That is a really powerful reason to have a personal brand. Now, Simon, I know I mentioned this earlier by giving away how long you've been here at Aquent, but you've been in the recruitment industry for a long time. So we've watched all sorts of swings with how people want to work and how organizations want to bring on talent. So what are some thoughts that you have around what's happening right now with the rise of the consulting class?
Yeah, look, and I think Philip touched on a few of those sorts of things. And I kind of think, let's just sort of lay the foundation, around what's driving, the future of work at the moment, or the shift and the change in work. And I think really, this trajectory of change that we have experienced through COVID, and look, there's some that I think argue that, maybe we've taken some steps back as the economy has softened, those sorts of things as well. But I think the foundation of the future of work and how things are changing is actually what is driving and supporting the importance of personal brand. I personally think the future of work will be a blended mix of hybrid and fully remote. And I think whilst we're seeing sort of less fully remote at the moment, and to Philip's point, this kind of mandate that organizations have in play, bringing people back to offices and those sorts of things as well. I think that will flip again as this kind of sluggish, lethargic economy that we're in at the moment. And there's this perception that maybe employers are in the driving seat. I personally think that nobody should really be in the driving seat. It's really about a collaborative partnership. But I think hybrid and remote work in particular will gain momentum. And I think, whilst that is great, and I think that is really important, certainly when it comes to the procurement of specialist skills, it does create visibility issues, Yes. I think that is why I think personal brand, is critically important. There's a few other things that I think will continue to emerge. I think there will be less emphasis on jobs and roles, and I think more emphasis on skills and experiences. And I think that is what's kind of fueling this consulting class, or what I refer to as this project economy. And I think that continue to grow. I think things like, career growth, terms like career growth and career progression, I think will be completely redefined, which I think is exciting. I think people will curate income in different ways. I think this whole kind of like, I think there will certainly be full-time jobs, those sorts of things as well. But we're already seeing that. There was a stat that I saw just recently. A funny feeling it was like one of the banks did it, which was really surveying people around how many people have an additional stream of income. And it was something like 43%. And what I was really, really interested in is that it then broke down the volume of that income. And there was a decent chunk that was earning an additional stream, a decent chunk of an additional stream of income. And finally, I just think, as a result of all of this, I think the future of work is that work will find you, you won't find work. And if so, how will you be found? And spoiler alert, I think that's where personal brand,
Wow, great. You spoiled the whole thing. Okay, I guess we're done. I'm kidding. We have some really great questions coming in. That was awesome, Simon. Just want to recognize Liz. Thank you for your comment about design. Design has become a commodity. Our personal branding can educate and provide skilled services. That's a really fabulous and timely comment with what we're talking about here. I do want to jump into a couple of questions that we've gotten. So Chris, I know you're like, are you ever getting to my question? We are getting to your question. There it is. So in a world of DEI, which is discriminating against straight, white, older males, how do you position a personal brand of 30 years of experience when there's already a predetermined plan not to hire a certain demographic? Now, I don't know that we can answer the DEI specific part on the side of organizations, but I do think the ability to position a personal brand with a lot of years of experience is a very relevant question. Philip, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really all about experience. I think it's about experience, visibility, as Simon said, and the how you are delivering the value that you are going to deliver to the people who are going to benefit from that value. And I think it's less about the person. One of the things I think is very interesting is, and particularly around the number of years of experience that we saw going through the chat, is that in the creative fields anyway, there's a tremendous amount of ageism, and many people are pivoting either to full-time consulting or freelancing, or they are being made redundant in roles through organizational changes, or or pure ageism,
or money.
or their salaries have risen to the point where they become a liability to the bottom line. But there are pivots happening either by choice or not by choice at that stage of the game, and it's at that moment where every person has to kind of take stock of what is the toolkit that they have accumulated over the years. How can they create a message around that, and how can they package that, and how they can become visible with that? Because that is what's going to be the draw. That is going to be the honey that draws all your clients to you.
Yep.
And I think it's less about your gender, your age, your ethnicity, as it is about the experience, the value, and how well you are delivering that value.
I love it. So, and I know we're going to put this up later, but Katie, if you wouldn't mind, Katie is our magical person in the chat. We love you, Katie. I know we're going to put it up later, but I happen to have personally gotten to see, Philip, your personal brand wheel, the structure and exercise of going through that. And I think that might be super relevant right now, because that is a lot more around that's a lot more about what positioning yourself than it is about and what you bring to the table and what you want than just diversity, equity, and inclusion. By the way, let's all be clear. It's real. We wouldn't be talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion if it wasn't a problem. It is real. So, but I think I love what you just said, Philip, about being able to position your experience and skills as a benefit to the organization. So thank you. Yeah. So, okay, just to make sure we get through a lot of questions, I am watching time while I'm doing all the rest of these things. But I would love to, we had a question earlier from, I believe, Jorge, about how we handle the lack of accountability from new generations of designers and creatives. Now, Philip, I know you're going to have a lot of thoughts around this. So Simon, I'd love for you to go first. So, and if it's helpful, there was a comment, Colton, thank you for putting the comment in about using DISC assessments. We use DISC assessments too. It's a way to look at communication styles and help people communicate better. But Simon, I'm sure you have additional thoughts. Go.
Sure. So accountability. So I'm assuming this is maybe being asked from maybe a leader, that is maybe experiencing those sorts of things as well. Look, I kind of would want to sort of immediately kind of get to the root cause of kind of what's going on here. Like, define lack of accountability. I think from a generational standpoint, there's a lot of thought leadership out there around sort of like the importance of, evolving leadership styles to sort of, cater to different generational styles, those sorts of things as well. I think also what's really important to remember, and I'm certainly not condoning lack of accountability, that's certainly not good. But it's also remembering is that we've got generations of people that are growing up in a world of instant gratification, and I think that is just a reality. You swipe left, you swipe right, you're hungry, you order food, all of those sorts of things as well. And so I do think, I think that is attributing to this perception, I think, of lack of accountability. But yeah, I think probably digging into that in a little bit more detail to understand would probably allow me to respond a little bit more.
Yeah. So I think what Simon just offered, yes, you can, Philip. Simon just offered for you to reach out to him directly, Jorge. Just go reach out to him directly. He'll answer. So go, Philip.
I think there's an interesting flip side to this, and that is that managers are challenged by virtual working relationships and with that accountability piece. But I want to look at the other side of that too, which are the employees or the designers or the creatives who are frustrated with their ability to build relationships or get visibility to upper management, which, as we know, is 85% of your promotability in almost any role. And to be able to build cross-divisional relationships with other functions in the company, which also add to your skill set and help you build that web of knowledge that's going to make you promotable. So I think that there's a challenge amongst employees in the remote environment with their ability to accumulate the skills and relationships they need to be promoted.
Yes.
And then there's the frustration on the managerial side to say, these people aren't doing what they're being told, or they're not, kind of performing at the level that I want them to be performing at. The one thing I also wanted to just recognize was what Simon said. And I hadn't heard you say this before, Simon, and I find it super interesting, which is you were saying that roles, growth, titles will become less important because of this aspect of the work environment. And I think that's fascinating, because I hadn't really thought of that or even considered that it could evolve that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of attachment that people have to org charts, and job titles. And don't get me wrong, I totally understand that's important. And to be honest, it was probably more important to me sort of earlier in my career, so I'm also understanding of that and how do you facilitate this perception of career growth. But I do think, I sort of, hit a turning point in terms of that. And me personally, I'm not big into hierarchy and structure, and I consider myself just one of the team and those sorts of things as well. For me, career growth is about growing my skills and experiences. That's what I sort of feel. And that's what I think having a shift towards, is important to be successful in this future of work.
Well, and what's interesting here about what you're both saying is I think there's an opportunity for leaders to actually help junior or even mid-career designers or other folks on their team learn to build their personal brand. Because if you know that your skills and experiences will become the opportunities that you have, you will become more accountable on the job to create those stories. So I do think there is some really strong tie-in here for the power of personal branding right now. And especially a lot of people are entering the workforce without the support structure that many of us had when everybody was sitting in the same room. I mean, I'm not advocating for that. I'm just saying it's different. So being able to support people as they think about building their personal brand from day one seems really powerful. Now, speaking of org charts, titles, and that, we have another question from Sunny. Thank you, Sunny, for the question. I've been seeing discussions regarding specialist versus generalist versus T-shaped. So general breadth, specific depth. Can you talk about building a brand around that? I think this is a great transition. Philip, you're nodding. Go.
Oh, yeah. This is like one of my huge points, which is that the days, unless you are employed inside of a corporation or an agency, the T-shaped skill set is dead. Because if you are going to operate in the freelancer consulting economy, you have to develop a V-shaped skill set. And for anyone who's not really familiar with this terminology, what that means is a T-shaped skill set is a specialist who has very little knowledge on a lot of things and very deep knowledge in one thing. Corporations love that. They hire for that. And they fill positions on what that T-shaped skill is. But in the consulting economy, or when you get out and start being an independent, you very quickly realize you got to develop some business development skills, some account management skills, some financial management skills, some time management skills. I mean, the list goes on. And unless you do, you better have enough income coming in to be able to hire people to do that for you, because that's a requirement of essentially running a business. And if you are independent in any sense, you are running a business.
Mm-hmm. Very true. Simon?
Yeah. So when I first saw that question, I thought to myself, yes, T-shape, specialization, critically important. Now that you've just said that though, Philip, I do understand what you sort of mean in terms of, those additional things that you need to be skilled at to be successful as a, independent consultant. Just another spin on that though, I feel that the role, let's just use the role of marketing manager. Let's just use that for a minute. I feel that particular, very generalist role where you had an understanding of all different sort of, brand and marketing channels and all those sorts of things as well. The continued rise of digital marketing, you understand all of those sorts of things. I feel that really the future of a generalist is dead. I do think you need to have expertise and a depth of expertise. This is what I think, in something, not on everything. I don't think you can be an expert in all things.
Right.
But what is your sort of, secret armor? What is your secret sauce? And I think that is really critically important.
Yeah.
I think to sort of ensure that, as I said, you have an understanding, broad understanding, but you have, and maybe it's not a T, maybe it's a series of T's.
Yes, whatever you have. Yes.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. So thank you for that. We have so many great comments coming in too. For those who are on the call, please do enjoy all these great comments. Obviously, we can't get to all of the comments, but thank you for putting those. Thanks for putting those in. We do have another question, which has to do again with sort of skills and moving around. This is James Fickling. Thank you, James. How does someone who wants to slightly pivot into an adjacent role within the same industry to their current one, how do you approach branding yourself without perceived having enough hands-on experience? So if you want to pivot, but you don't necessarily have all the hands-on experience for the adjacent role, what's a tip for being able to position yourself in that case?
I think you need to be super proactive in building an understanding and an expertise, in that area. Super proactive in consuming content, super proactive in upward growth and learning. And then I think online platforms create a wonderful opportunity to sort of, in a vehicle to, share that learning, share that perspective, share that point of view. So I think, again, an online brand allows you to sort of, talk to, whilst you may not necessarily have had experience, there's a lot of content that you can sort of, consume. And I think as a result, you can develop knowledge. You may not necessarily have the hands-on experience, but I think that in itself is going to help position you for that sort of pivot.
I love it. And Philip, I bet you have a video for this since you have 500 of them on your YouTube channel.
I mean, one of the things when I coach people on how to get promoted to creative director from senior designer or whatever is that you have to start doing the job you want before you get it. And because you will be seen as aspiring to that skill set, but also developing that skill set. And no one's going to give you the promotion until you're already really exhibiting that sort of capability. And the same thing goes for when you're pivoting within an industry for an adjacent role, is that you have to start essentially doing that job before you get it or before you can market yourself for it. The one thing I would say that Simon said, which is really key, is that on the internet, no one knows you're a dog, meaning that you can come out on the internet and publish content, authoritative content on this adjacent skill and develop a library of that content, which when someone searches for you or looks at you on LinkedIn, they're going to see that you're already publishing, thinking, being nurturing a thought leader in this adjacent skill set. And that's what's going to rise to the top. Yeah. And this sort of becoming visible in the job that you want is what's eventually going to get you that job.
I love it. And someone just put into the chat, thank you, LinkedIn user. Volunteering also helps one obtain hands-on experience. And what a lovely way to get hands-on experience. I love that too. Yeah. Again, great for comments here. I know I just want to put this out for anyone who has very specific experience or situations that you want to talk to anyone about. We promise Simon and Philip and me will talk to you. Please reach out to us directly with anything that's super specific. We'll be very happy to help you. All right. So, I mean, I feel like we can't even move on unless we talk about what you promised, which is AI. But I've said it. I've destroyed the entire conversation. But before I do that, 2 really cool comments just came in. Thank you, Sarah Campbell, for saying, offer to do a pro bono project for a cause you love and a group who may not be able to afford to hire someone and get experience that way. That's another neat way to, I guess, volunteer, but do it in a way that you love. And Gentry, thank you. Finding a mentor, another great tip. Melissa, network in the circles you want to grow into. These are awesome, awesome tips for being able to get that experience you want. And I think that applies not even just to moving adjacently or pivoting your career, but anything you want to do, being able to get that experience. So yes. All right. Thank you for that. AI. So Philip, you mentioned it at the very beginning. I know we want to make sure we touch on that today because there's no such thing as a call on LinkedIn that doesn't have AI conversation in it. So what are some thoughts you have about AI? You mentioned specifically how technology is changing. What else?
Well, as creative people, I mean, we are in the catbird seat because AI is giving us a tremendous amount of new tools, both from generative AI in terms of design and helping us along with that, but also making it much easier for us to develop creative that may be slightly outside of our skill set. So if you're a graphic designer, developing writing pieces or thought pieces are a lot easier with the help of AI. AI is also kind of it's putting a lot of SaaS products on steroids. So it's giving a lot more functionality within the entire Adobe Creative Suite for one, but then also a whole suite of independent SaaS products, which make developing creative work, everything from audio to video to writing to graphic design, so much easier and quicker than it was before.
Yeah.
I've done some videos on the freak out, which is the freak out of the graphic designers and the creative industry around AI is going to take my job and, you know, that the sky is falling. I'm old enough to have been through the dawn of the computer age when graphic designers freaked out about how the computer was going to ruin graphic design. But in both of these cases, what it's doing is it's giving us a gigantic new toolkit of things to do our job with. And we're going to be able to do it better and easier. And in some cases, in the case of AI, with much more creative invention than we have before.
Yeah.
But we are the ones driving it. And it's our responsibility to learn the tools because the people in our agencies and corporations are going to be looking to us to make those tools come to life and bring value to the job.
100%. If I could do the heart thing that's supposed to show up with a bunch of hearts, I would do that right now. Here you go, Philip. I love that. And Simon, before you weigh in, we have, I think, a very timely question from Chris. Thank you, Chris. Authentic. Here's Chris's question. Authentic is a word that is tossed around. LinkedIn has become increasingly political, while at the same time, diversity of thought can be detrimental to your personal brand. Do you recommend being neutral on all topics or being authentic? It's Simon. You're going to start this one. So should you be neutral on all topics or be authentic? I'm throwing this to you because I think I know your answer.
I think it depends on what the topic is, obviously. But, you know, I don't think, you know, people nor brands can be neutral on certain topics, you know, today. I think, you know, again, it comes to the topic, but, you know, I think authenticity is incredibly important. I think people want to connect with people. Humans want to connect with humans. And I think there has been a massive shift, you know, over the last, you know, I'd say 10 years, but it's probably started before that, which is around the sort of connection, peer-to-peers, and the connection that, you know, humans have. And I think this is also in leadership as well. I think, you know, the old sort of guard of leadership was very much around, not being vulnerable, you know, not wanting to sort of share that you don't know something, and what have you, and you feeling as though you need. And I think that is really sort of very old school, you know, now. I think really sort of authenticity is
Mhm.
critically important. You know, I think you know there's somebody I follow, you know, daily on social, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and that's Mel Robbins, and I think she's fabulous. I think she's a fabulous example of you know, authenticity and lived experiences and those sorts of things as well. So what I would just say, the parting comment I would say is, I do see a rise of what I call fake authenticity. You know, trying to kind of come across that I'm really authentic and those sorts of things, but it's actually fabricated, you know, and I think that comes through actually in content, and or, you know, people's experience with the individual maybe in the real world is quite different to their online persona. So I think that is just something that you sort of need to be mindful
Yeah.
as well.
Totally agree. Well, and Philip, as you were saying about AI being a tool, and it is a great tool and is a thought starter, and we can be more creative or whatever. I think that's another place where authenticity can get lost. If that's all you do is use AI and you're not applying your brain and your thoughts to it. So what, I guarantee you have a video on this too, Philip. Authenticity, what's your take on that? Should you be authentic, or you should be neutral on all topics?
In terms of the question, I would say that,
Right.
you know, historically, I personally have tried to be neutral politically, but that's just about it. Political, you know, discourse has become so divisive in the country recently that it almost is not a benefit to really bring that into your business life. That's my opinion. There
Mhm.
are certain businesses, nonprofits, et cetera, which are politically or socially kind of importantly connected, where political points of view are important to voice. But in terms of being a service providing creative, it's definitely probably not going to benefit you. If you cannot silence yourself and you want to understand that by voicing something political, you're going to be possibly carving off 50% of your potential clients, that's up to you. And you are totally free to do that.
Yeah.
The one thing I would say about authenticity, though, which I think is really important, is that, and this is to Simon's point too, is that if you don't have an opinion, you're not going to be seen. You're not going to elevate. People want to have someone who believes deeply in something. And if you're kind of coming across as milquetoast and not really showing up and putting a stake in the ground about something that you believe in, you got to stand for something. And that's scary. It's really scary on social media, because you have to open yourself up to someone who stands for something else, who's going to drop into the comments and throw a couple bombs your way. But the reality is that in order to become known for something, to establish credibility and visibility and authority, you have to stand for something. And
Yep.
in building a personal brand, that's phase one, really, is when you understand what your story is and what your value is and what your mission is, because that's going to drive everything else that you do, from where you show up to what you put out into
Yeah.
the world.
I love it. And thank you, Annette, for your comment. This is a quote. If you don't stand for anything, you'll fall for anything. That's it. That's it. But you can have a brand that embraces diversity without it being political. It's called civil discourse. Love it. So there
Love
is a
that.
way to do both. So I know I am watching time. Okay, there's another. Thank you, LinkedIn user. If you don't stand for something, you stand for nothing. There's another good one. So yes, I think we're all clear on authenticity. So do we have time to take one more question? Yeah, I think we're okay for one more question. And then you're both going to give some parting thoughts. So think about that. This is our last question, and that will be Courtney. Thank you, Courtney. If you wear two hats, have two lines of business that are relevant to each other but separate, how do you create a personal brand that can straddle both?
Philip, you go.
I know. I was going to say, Philip, your nod
Yeah.
and smile was too fast.
My nod and
Go.
smile is actually exactly the opposite what I wanted to do, which was shake my head. Because really, when it comes down to it, you have to be very clear and myopic around the vision that you are manifesting of yourself out in the marketplace. And if you are wearing two hats, that is, you are doubling your work, you are doubling the message you're putting out. And what people really need is they need to know why they are coming to you. What exactly are they coming to you for? And if you are doing two things simultaneously, they're going to either say, well, they're not that great at this because they're also doing this, or if they need both, that's fantastic, but that's going to be pretty rare. And so it's going to muddy your message, and it's going to make everything that you do, from social media to content to commenting to sharing, curated content, it's going to make it difficult. Even building your network, it's going to make that more difficult. One little example that I see often with creatives that I coach is that they may have a creative outlet outside of work. Could be music, could be fine art, and or photography, and they want to feature that on a page in the navigation on their website. And or even, on the homepage at the bottom or something, here are my paintings. I always discourage that. I strongly encourage people having a creative outlet outside of their main job. But to do that is showing people that you are, on one hand, yes, it's showing you're a real person and you have other things going on in your life. But when it comes down to it, in a business standpoint, you want to be as myopically focused and messaging as possible.
Yeah. I bet you have a video about this too. I see your finger, Simon. Go.
Can I just add to this? I totally agree. Philip, I totally agree. And I think what's really important when building personal brand, it's a lifelong pursuit. It's not a one and done thing. It's not about sort of, writing some great sort of web copy or social media copy or what have you, and ultimately sort of putting that out there and it's like, great, I'm all done. It's like the analogy of kind of going to do exercise, going to the gym. I mean, you go to the gym, you do a weights workout, what have you, and look in the mirror. Nothing's changed. You go tomorrow, you do another weights workout, you come home and look in the mirror, guess what? Nothing's changed. Personal brand, all of a sudden in 3 months and 6 months and 12 months, if you have been consistent and you've invested in it, the reality is that you will see change. It's like a 401k account. You put some investment in there and it goes up and down, and there's swings and roundabouts in the economy, and it's up and down and all those in and out. But over time, you've hopefully got an upward trajectory. You know? And so, I mean, if you actually look at content strategy, if you look at sort of like, building your audiences, those sorts of things as well. To try and do that in 2 laneways is double the work.
Difficult. Yes. So I'm sure, Courtney, there's a story behind your question. And if you want to connect directly with Philip or Simon or me to go deeper into that. But thank you for sparking the conversation. And there's a lot of action in the chat here around authenticity. I think we hit a nerve on that one. So yes, authenticity, people, love it. Okay. So now on to, I believe we've painted a good picture of why having a great personal brand that is very clear about who you are, what you want, and how someone can work with you is important. So I would love for you to, on our ending note, I'd love for each of you to give your one thing that people can do to get started today, to take another step towards personal brand. And yes, Simon, you're smiling. You're going first because Philip has to go last.
Well,
okay.
I was smiling because I thought, one thing? Can we only share one?
Yes. It was like that one word thing. You both failed, but yes.
Talk. If I was going to focus on one thing, I would say, what do you want to be known for? What do you consider yourself to be an expert in? And I'm talking deep expertise.
Yes.
I touched on this earlier on. And I think also, understanding that this expertise needs to bring value to an audience. The expertise is on demand, and the audience is of a decent size that makes it worthwhile. So, there's a whole lot of stuff that hangs off that, but I think probably that is the starting point. You can't be all things to all people. And that's where I find most people, that 90% of people that I've sort of worked with around developing a personal brand, they're trying to do it, and they're not quite sure. Focus in. And focus.
Love it. Philip, now say the opposite. I'm just kidding. Philip, what do you think is one thing people could do to get started?
To start.
I love it.
That is.
No, just stop there. That's it.
No.
I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Really, starting, building, like Simon said, personal branding is a long game, just like content marketing is a long game. It's not like advertising. You pay for it, it runs, you get business the next day. it's like a 401k. It's like a bank account. But the thing is that you actually have to sign up for the 401k and you have to put in your first
Put
$2.
money in. Yep.
And that is what I like to call the terror barrier. Posting your first post that is about your expertise, is putting yourself out there in a visible way, starting at that very first step to build authority in a personal brand is absolutely terrifying. And 90% of the people cannot get over that barrier. So if you do, you are already way ahead of everybody else. And it doesn't take much. I mean, I challenge anyone to go back, go to my YouTube videos, sort by date, and look at the very first YouTube video that I did. I have over 550 up there now. It's horrible. It like scares the hell out of me. The first 50 pieces of content that you do, or thought pieces, or whatever it is that you're putting out into the world, is going to be crappy. But the beautiful thing is that no one's watching yet. You haven't built an audience yet. So you're free to make those mistakes and to stumble and learn and get better at your craft, because there's no one in the audience yet. But you can't get to that retirement 401k moment unless you start. So that's my recommendation.